questions before we get in there. All right, hello everybody. Welcome to episode number 3 of Inside the Secret Space Program. I've certainly missed doing this series with, again, all of this incredible information that we've shared in past episodes. So we do have our special guests here today for Inside the Secret Space Program. We have Randy Cramer and we have Elena Kapulnik. So Randy and Elena, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us. Great,
excellent. So before we begin today's show, everybody, again, feel free to check out realitywhisperer.com next weekend. I believe it's on Sunday, I think. I have to check. But on portaltoascension.org, I'll be doing the Ascension Online Conference. I believe that's next Sunday. And you can check that out, portaltoascension.org. Also, the Reality Whisperer webcast will be coming up this Tuesday. Again, talking a lot about duality. And of course, starting in late September, we're going to have the second part of the Adronis fourth density teachings. We had a really incredible webinar yesterday, and so next month we'll be having part 2 of the Adronis fourth density teachings. So that will be up later today on realitywhisperer.com. And of course, you can always check out Elena Kapulnik's website. Is it still the same, Elena?
Yes, it's back.
Okay. And what is the address?
It is Elena, well, it's called Messages from a Star Traveler, elenalist.wixsite.com/Star Traveler Messages.
Great, excellent. We'll have that in annotations as well. And Randy, how about your website?
It's still earthcitizenconsulting.org.
Excellent,
so,
very good.
Still me.
Okay, great. So feel free to check out those.
I will say that one little bit of good news after Coast to Coast the other night, my IT guy said that he had to expand the bandwidth to maximum because the traffic on the site was so big. So
that's great. Yeah, I remember I was having problems trying to contact you the first time. So
that might be why.
Yeah, I'm glad it's all fixed up. So very good, guys. Anyways, let's catch up in regards to how things have been going these last couple of months, because again, there's obviously been a lot of heating up in regards to the world forum, so to speak. There's been a lot of political shakedown, a lot of shifting happening. Randy, let's start with you. What have you received? Has there been any new updates within the last month or so in regards to what's happening?
Wow. Well, we're kind of in. Well, my Brigadier General, in sort of his, he said, metaphorically speaking, earlier on in the summer, we might want to think of June, July, August, September, October as the 5 acts of a Shakespearean play. And anyone who's ever, had to take a class, a collegiate level class on Shakespeare, there's this very thematic sort of what happens in the first act, the second act, the third act, the fourth act, and the fifth act. And so we're basically just in the middle of Act 3, which is, really the action, conflict, kind of act. And so we're seeing data dumps and information coming out, every few days. Assange has got, a new WikiLeaks stuff every few days. He's got, here's the next bit and the next bit and the next bit, and that just keeps getting more interesting. And that's obviously not the only thing that's happening. There's just this incredible conflux of chaotic forces coming together, both in what I think are conflict that will, end up in resolution. That's sort of what happens in Act 4 and Act 5, as it were. And so I think we're just in the middle of a series of what appear to be very, very chaotic, conflicting events, but really are the kinds of things that will shake up our reality in such a way that will lead us to sort of the resolutions and so forth of the fourth and fifth act, if that's a fair metaphor to use, because this isn't a date-oriented thing so much as it is an event-oriented. So, that's a loose sort of, just because we get to the end of August doesn't mean Act 3 is over, you know what I'm saying? So it's not so precise date-oriented as event-oriented. But I think we're going to see some truly fascinating stuff. I could spend so much time talking about the political process, but let's just say keep an eye on it. It's going to get really interesting. Don't give up hope for anyone who's thinking, oh, Hillary's going to win or Trump's going to win. The fat lady hasn't sung on this one, as it were. And I think that we're going to see such change and continue in this process that don't predict anything right now, because it's just going to continue to get more and more interesting. I think we're still looking towards disclosure events of one kind or another. we anticipated that we would have seen the Snowden documents already, but we know that just it's about the timing of the release of the movie, which is the middle of the September. So I were anticipating it would have been a little sooner, but maybe they're waiting for something else. And the way Assange keeps talking about the way he's timing, data dumps for the debates and so forth, maybe everyone's really looking at a calendar in a way that, I was not exactly, or we weren't really considering or looking at the same calendar that they're looking at. And we're still waiting for that, but we expect some pretty huge bombs in there. Not to mention just events that a number of people, both news agencies, media organizations, military intelligence organizations, seem to be leading up to these steps of, there's like a 6 steps, from one to the other, and they're like kind of 2, 3, 4, they're moving along. So we really are just waiting for the conclusion of the end of a number of processes to get through from step 1 to step 9 or 10 or whatever it is.
Oh, wow, very interesting. Because it almost seems like with Julian Assange and with Edward Snowden that they may be working for a different type of alliance, because we have many different alliances here that are playing the kind of Earth game. So do you feel that maybe there's something in regards to a specific date to come out? Maybe it's something numerological. Maybe it's just something in regards to appropriate timing, that they're still waiting for somebody to trip on a certain trigger in that way, and then being able to bring this information out appropriately.
I would bet that the people who are making those decisions are deciding a number of factors that, as people from the outside, we're doing the best we can to guess what those factors look like they are, but obviously the people making those decisions are exactly what you're saying, making those decisions based on certain dates, influences that they know about that we don't necessarily know about, and we can only just wait to see how they make their move. Everybody makes their moves.
Exactly. It's kind of like a game of hopscotch. You're always wondering if you want to stay one step ahead of a person, right? And so basically trying to stay 1 or 2 steps ahead before something like that actually gets out in the open and is actually being exposed.
I actually saw one time a chessboard that had 4 different colors on it and 4 different sides, and you were able to play 4 different players or 4 different complete sides in a chessboard. And let me just tell you what a cluster fudge that starts to become. And I think it's maybe something more like that, like the most number of sides playing on one multi-level chessboard that is move, counter move, next move, and it looks chaotic standing sort of from the sidelines, but I think everyone is making their moves for very, very precise reasons and in precise timing that they are either being forced to act upon or choosing to act upon in their own choosing. So I think this is just the part where predictions are hard. We're just going to have to watch this bit and wait for some of it to sort itself out. Because I will say that when we predicted that Bernie Sanders was going to win the primary and probably take the election, I don't think there was anything wrong or inaccurate about that prediction, because we weren't expecting a 30-point voter fraud swing in some places. We were expecting the 2 to 5%. And so anticipating that, he should have gotten the primary, and he would have. He would have gotten the votes. He would have won. But there was more cheating. And so that affected the timeline. And so there's a number of things that will affect that, but I've talked to my brigadier general, and it's not like we're sitting back going, oh no, our plans have been completely foiled. It's like we've got contingencies for contingencies as well. And so, he just keeps reminding me, we got a plan C for that. We got a plan D for that. Don't worry, we'll work it out. So.
Yeah, that was always my feeling as well too, because of being able to look at his energy and noticing exactly all the momentum that he had behind as well. It's kind of a given that he would get it. But of course, then we're looking at all of the shakeups and the manipulation and rigs that was taking place as well too. So I think that can throw anybody off balance.
Well, and it was again doing the guessing numbers. If you figured the normal voter fraud swing, which, like I said, is between 3 and 5%, he still would have won by the numbers. But in some places, the swing was 30 points, and that was just unprecedented and unheard of in any election in the United States, let alone a presidential election. So for anyone who hasn't really caught on to that, when we say unprecedented voter fraud in a presidential election, that's a big deal, and people really should, be seriously wanting to fix that immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Because without a fair process, there is no process. And so I believe we all have to participate. And if we're finding that the process is being, taken away from us, one of the first things we need to do then is make sure it's fair and the rules are held to, and then when people are going to break the rules, that they're held accountable.
Exactly. And I think also because, there's also the talk about we may not even have a presidential election because both of these candidates are something that's not really appealing to either people. So who knows exactly what's going to happen come November.
Well, and let me suggest other possibilities where other persons who may have been in before may have an opportunity to come back in, and or I mean, there's so many different things that could happen here. Like, I don't want to okay, so if, hypothetically speaking, any number of the very serious legal challenges that are coming against Hillary Clinton stick to her at all, and she is forced to either step down out of the race and back out for any reason, or is legally forced to, be out of the race, the Democratic Party has no candidate. And there's no way that they're just going to go, oh, well, we don't have a candidate. Oh, well, what are we going to do? They will absolutely at that point want to play, the Miss Universe game of who's our first runner-up. And, they would not want to have an empty seat if all of a sudden, their candidate crashed and burned, and that would absolutely be a reason for them to get Bernie back in. And even though I realize he's left the party and all these other things have happened, but believe me when I say that party mechanics could make that happen if they lost their candidate. Mm-hmm. If she's diminished in the numbers to such a point that the demand is simply great enough. Really a write-in campaign with the unpopularity of Clinton and Trump, really a write-in campaign could get Bernie Sanders enough votes. I mean, there's so many different things that could occur as far as them getting out, other people getting either in or gaining more popularity. Jill Stein's numbers have continued to grow, and she continues to get more press time. I don't think we should discount anybody's position is either up or down, because there is such a chaotic factor that we've never seen before in a presidential election, and so many legal challenges to both candidates who, I won't go on about it too far, but really our legal team is really determined that both of them have committed high treason in this process. And how can you really endorse or say we should vote for either high treasoner when they've both committed acts of treason to be in this participation of the presidential election process? She's committed fraud. He's been a fraudulent candidate to help someone else win, which is not, running in honesty and so forth. Yeah, I mean, that they've both committed treason for that. So how can either one of them be elected and maintain the integrity that we need in this country? So there are serious questions about how not to get either one of them elected at this point. Now, beyond, I can't go any further to say how that may or may not work out, other than the random things that I may have just said. But don't discount anything out until the fat lady sings, as it were. And I'm as hopeful that neither one of them gets elected as anybody else at this point. But we'll see how it goes. I will say this: we think worst case scenario, 4 years of an absolute gummied up Trump presidency might occur as what could be considered a salvation. I know that's not really like a positive salvation, but it's sort of the how do you avoid the absolute worst case scenario, and that's stalemate. And so a 4-year Trump presidency would just be 4 years of stalemate, and then we could basically get back into the process of playing the actual game again. So anyway, we'll see.
All right, excellent. Well, let's move on to Elena. And Elena, how have things been going with you? Before we were on the air, you were telling me about your trip you made to Venus. So if you wanted to talk about that.
Yes, that was pretty interesting. Yesterday, Anaya, one of my contacts from the descendants of the ancient builder race, contacted me and said, "Do you want to go on Venus and see our outposts, the ancient builder race outposts that they left behind?" So I said, "Sure, yes." So I saw 2 outposts. They are built out of crystalline technology. It has bio-living matter in it. And it looked like one of the bases was built inside the mountain and built outwards toward the sky. So Venus is pretty barren right now. There's still no, there's pockets of water and stuff, but it's the surface looks still barren. And there are underground civilizations that were left behind. They're guardians. They're descendants of the ancient builder race. They're descendants, not the actual builder race. So, I've gotten new ability. Basically, I could go on. I don't have to use my computer for the internet anymore. I could just follow the slipstream information of whatever data is on the internet. And I said, I want to see images of the builder race outposts. And so in my head, I see visuals and I see a link, basically a data link, which it's recorded in my brain, and when I'm ready, I can just go on the internet, put in the coordinates, and I get images. And that was confirmation. And one of the images was called Sentinel, and the other image was called Awake. Basically, they have sentinels left behind in these outposts. So if you have the right vibrational frequency and key codes to enter, if your vibration is high enough and you're awake and you're ready to know who you were, who you are, and who you'll be, if you say yes, then you have access to these outposts. And there's basically a lot of knowledge repositories on those outposts, like the whole history of how this universe was created, history on species, DNA, repositories, knowledge repositories, anything you want is there. And a lot, like some people are getting downloads who have vibrational access to these outposts. They're getting these downloads of these histories, who we are, who we were, how it all went down, couple of billion years ago. So it's quite interesting.
Now, with these sentinels, are they a type of artificial intelligence, or are they another type of entity?
They are bio-living holographic matter, basically. They're not AI.
How would you define that in regards to bio-living holographic matter? Are they like basically replicas, or?
They're a holographic interaction, basically. They're made of light. They're basically made of light codes. They look real. Sometimes you can even solidly touch them because it's light energy. Right. It's not AI, and they have this silver pearlescent white skin, and it looks like a male sentinel when you first access the portal to enter the outpost. It looks like a huge hulking guy who has this silver alabaster white skin, and if you have the correct frequency codes to enter, he'll let you in. If you don't, boom, can't go in. Don't have the vibrational frequency.
Very giant sentinels, like very, very tall, or?
Yeah, about 16 feet.
Wow, 16?
16 in height, yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
what are they wearing? Are they wearing like some type of armor, or are they?
Some of them are wearing these silver jumpsuits. It's not armor. Some of them are wearing these blue robe-like outfits. And they have this. Some of them have this white long hair. Some of them have this silverish blue hair. So it's not the same sentinel that always appears.
I see. So different ones that.
Yes, and they have different type of outposts. They're not the same. Not all of them are the same. The configuration is different.
Now, what is so special about Venus? Because I think this is one of the planets that we at least know most about, because we've heard a lot about Mars. We've even heard a lot about our own moon. What is special about Venus? What is contained upon Venus that, in that sense, is so highly guarded?
Well, it's those knowledge repositories. It's like world libraries. Imagine like you have information on how to build a universe. That's in those libraries. Venus is one of the first planets that they actually settled, that the ancient builder race settled. And there's also some outposts on Saturn, Pluto. There's even outposts here on Earth, but those cities look more ancient, like more like India's type of outposts that they left behind. But they have very advanced outposts on Venus and Saturn, crystalline-based technology. Imagine these spiraling out outposts built from the ground to the top of the sky, and it's made of crystalline, glowing energy technology. It's nothing that I've seen before. I mean, this is technology from 1,000 years in the future, basically. That's
Wow.
the technology. So it's spiraling out. Like, the space is huge. I shouldn't call it a base. They call them outposts. It's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there Venusians that are working with Earth right now? Like basically some of these beings that are found on Venus, are they working within the secret space program, or are they working in other means?
Well, they act more like liaisons to the secret space program,
Mm.
making sure we're on the right track.
Have you met any Venusians while you were in your term with the SSP?
I would say, if you count Ashtar Command, I would say yes, some of them are Venetian, and they look a lot like Nordics.
Mm.
So there are on Venus, there's Nordic types on Venus.
Oh, very good, because we're going to get back to Venus. Randy, how about you? Have you heard any information in regards to Venus or the Venusians while you were in service?
Very little.
Very little.
Other than that, it is a place where the Hathor come from, or the connection between the Egyptians and the Hathor, etc. There's this Venusian connection there. There's not much I know about it other than that.
Okay, very interesting. So, Elena, you said that again you were invited on Venus, and you were basically looking at these repositories and these outposts. Were you able to go very deeply inside? Were you able to look inside about what these libraries, these knowledge centers look like?
Yeah, I was able to go inside because I have the access code. And they have a lot of these glowing blue symbols that look like Egyptian letters, but a lot more like what your light circuitry looks like. Your symbols. It looks similar to that, but it's glowing blue. You touch one of them, and you see some type of history. You get a knowledge download of history. Basically, I was viewing how Mars was settled, the beginning, how Earth was settled. I was viewing how they created this universe. So it's like you touch one symbol and you get this huge download in your head. And it's a lot of light energy data. You have to be able to process that data. If you're not ready for it, it could overload your head, basically.
Now, this is a question I often have. It's very interesting that a local neighbor planet in that way basically has all this information on how to create the universe. Now, I'm wondering, are other star systems like that? Do they have maybe certain planets and other star systems where they may also have suppositories or knowledge centers like this that would also explain the same thing?
Yes, they do, and they might look different depending. I don't think the ancient builder race was just one species. I think they
That's
had.
my feeling. It's like a group. Yeah.
It's a group, and one of the images that I got of the bases looked like just these giant mountain peaks. That's how they created their base. So it doesn't actually look like a base or an outpost. It looks like a giant mountain peak, but it's really disguised as an outpost. It looks just like rock. So it wasn't made out of, well, it's still made of crystalline technology, but it looks like rock formations. So it's hard to tell whether it's an outpost or not. That's one of the outposts, and this is not in this solar system. That's in another solar system. So not all of their outposts look the same, and it's really interesting. And their technology is disguised to look like rock. It could look like just a rock, and when you touch it, it transforms into something else energetically. It's all made of
like a hologram.
Yes, it's all made of hollow light technology. And it's not AI technology. So it's sort of, it looks like one thing to the naked human eye, but if you have the right vibrational frequencies and you touch the thing, you activate the codes, and it's something else totally.
Huh.
You have to be able to follow the key code sequences. It lights up. There's symbols that light up, and you have to program in the right frequency to even activate the thing, whatever technology you're working with.
Now, for your entry into the library, did you see anything interesting that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I saw this sort of like triangular, round, glowing white-blue portal, and I had to press the correct key code sequence of the letters. It looks like light circuitry. I had to press the correct vibrational frequency, and it sounded like music to me. I was hearing music in my head. So when I pressed the correct sequence, and basically the outpost won't let you in if you're not correctly vibrationally centered. If you have negativity in you, if you're having nasty thoughts, it just won't let you in. You have to be correctly aligned in your auric field as well for them to let you in.
Contain
If you're,
humility.
yeah, if you're not, forget it. You come back another time when you're, when you're grounded and you're centered. Because if you're negative, they won't let you in.
So it feels like an enlightenment technology that basically
yes,
you have to
yes,
really be enlightened and humbled within yourself before you.
yes, yes. Otherwise, forget it. It's like you're locked out. Come
Wow.
back another time when you are spiritually in alignment.
Well, here's a question for both of you. Did either of you see anything like that on Mars? Was there anything of that nature, like some sort of suppository or knowledge center?
Not like that I could think of necessarily. I mean, the indigenous reptoids certainly have a view that, knowledge is contained within the very, crystalline rocks of their planet, and there is a way to access that information. But, I'm having interesting ponderances about the possibilities of it as a different type of library, or possibility of all the planets in the solar system acting as libraries, and that the solar system is actually the library center and not just any one of the planets. That's an interesting concept I'm going to have to think about. But library worlds are rare. They're not as common as just regular worlds. I know that much, and so I know that the Earth is a library planet, and that makes it very interesting if Venus is a library planet and Mars is a library planet. I'm going to have to talk to some people about that, but not that I saw when I was there, no, but they certainly talked about, how they communicate with their planet and get information and so forth.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the indigenous reptoids as well too. Like, what is their history? How did they begin? Have they been on Mars for perhaps millions and millions of years?
As far as they told me, but they didn't necessarily, go, we evolved from this rock lizard to this. I mean, they didn't necessarily have that conversation, but the conversation was, it was their home and has been their home forever.
So that's kind of like what the Argothans have been saying here with a lot of the human races in that sense. We've been here for forever, since the beginning of its time, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've had reptilian races evolve on Earth, in inner Earth, and start out there and then migrate over to Mars and back and forth. So we've had native reptilians here on this planet, like, that weren't warring with each other. They were living peacefully on the planet, just minding their own business.
They still have communities underground, as far as I understand.
Yes, they do, both here on Earth and on Mars. And Mars has a lot of pyramid technology that was left behind. So that has some library repositories in the pyramids itself. But again, you can't access that without the proper vibrational frequency codes.
Have a humility to yourself, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's a little different from the ancient builder race technology. That's the technology that the original Mars colonists built on Mars before it was, went through its two destructional periods, through like 2.6 billion years ago. It's eons. It goes back billions of years. Mars is older than what the fossil record really shows us, like what we're given information about it through NASA. It's billions of years old.
Now, how about the insectoid and the reptoids? Now, do they work together, or have there been certain forms of scuffles with them in the past, or are they kind of in a state of truce?
It's always a little back and forth, because there's different reasons of convenience and or not habit. We've been doing this for a while, so we'll get bored and weak if we stop. So we'll continue to, sharpen our claws, in battle, so we don't get weak in case someone comes along again that we have to really be ready for. So, I mean, their way is combat and war is a way of life for them, as a way of honor, as a way of living, as a way of understanding truth and their strength and so forth, in a way that I think in similar ways the warrior code on this planet can be seen that way in something like Bushido, but it's also easy to corrupt and distort that kind of code, just like it happened there, and cause their planet to be destroyed. But that doesn't stop warriors from going back to their original code, which is, you have to stay strong and stay disciplined and continue to be better and better and better at what you do, because someday you will face a threat that will challenge every inch of your ability and your tenacity to defend yourself or your people or your world. So I don't think that they're ever going to change that. But my understanding is we've had a peace agreement, so at least most of the northern tribes, the insectoids and the humans, are mostly at peace. That doesn't mean that the southern tribes still don't represent, a similar kind of Wild West sort of reason to, send the cavalry out and, test the equipment some more. But I don't think we're having nearly the kinds of levels of conflict that we were having with other interspecies. My understanding is sort of the main thing that's happening there is the full-on revolt, worker rebellion revolt from the Mars colonists that has erupted, and we're still got places that we have no communications from. We have no idea our viewers are telling us what they think is happening there, but they have some pretty still developed obfuscation technology and so forth that's keeping it very difficult to see what's happening. Certainly from each other, they're trying to keep each other's movements, invisible, so that makes it hard as observers even to see what's really going on. So, but it's a full-on fight.
Well, Corey Good has talked about something that happened on Mars. It was like a type of disaster where a lot of colonists were killed.
Yeah, our determination is that was a planned industrial accident that was designed to create chaos, disrupt some transportation and some train lines, and allow for a rebellious movement to separate some territory and take out some local security forces and gain control of some manufacturing, mining areas, and essentially to have a physical base of operation from which to engage, the sort of oppressors in a revolutionary fight for rights. Whether I don't know what their demands are, whether it's like, to the death, or whether it's like, okay, we want a minimum wage and we want, a 5-day work week, and we want, I don't know, but they're fighting for it. And so at the moment, what we understand that to be was a planned industrial accident that started this whole mess into motion, and they are now duking it out for serious, and we'll see what happens.
So is this kind of like an infighting through the interplanetary corporate conglomerate, or is this?
It is. Yeah. Because
we would suggest that agents certainly showed up on the ground to help the workers and so forth start this revolution. We're not saying they started it just on their own, but yeah, there's definitely infighting and people who decided that this needed to happen, and that's what's happening. And I'm sorry, Elena, I didn't mean to step on you there, please.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, what's going on is the ICC has a stranglehold on the worker force. They've basically enslaved a lot of people under false pretenses that work in their mines, that work in their labs unwillingly. So these people have been planning this for a little while, this revolt. And when I was on Mars recently, when I was getting a tour of one of the SSP bases, the Marines there were testing out new exoskeleton suits. They're playing around with plasma weaponry. They're testing out new weaponry. It's quite interesting. So they have these new suit armor, and then I saw the reptilian side of it, and they have this shielding armor that they wear. It's called ecto armor, some kind. It looks like reflectory chainmail or something. Well, it's not chainmail, but the material is interesting. So they've been testing out new armory, basically, the Marines at the SSP bases. It's quite interesting.
Because this all just goes back into the beginning of how this whole trade thing began.
Yeah.
As well. So, like, how did humanity get involved with this whole intergalactic trading thing? Did it begin with the entrance of the Greys, or was there another way of how they were introduced into it?
Well, it's basically the Greys crashed their ships on purpose on this planet. The Roswell incident, other incidents, these ships crashed on purpose to advance our technology, so we'd figure out how to reverse engineer all of this and use it. And the reptilians have been working with the Nazis. The Greys have been crashing the ships. It's all a plan. It was all planned out. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth.
That's actually really funny. Oops, we dropped a spaceship off the back of the truck. I hope nobody picks it up and figures it out.
Exactly. They were dropped on purpose to figure it out, reverse engineer it, and get all of these groups to, start working with these certain ET other groups, like get humans working with this group, this group. Oh, how can we get them? Let's give them something interesting to look at, to work with, and get them going on all of these secret programs. Build it all out from the ground down, to the ground up, so to speak.
So it was basically kind of dangling this technological carrot and saying, "Here you guys go. Now you can be part of the trade."
Wasn't there an old Star Trek episode about that where they gotta give these guys muskets, and then they give these guys muskets, and then they give them better rifles, and then they're like, no, we're gonna build up both sides until eventually they got phasers and space. I've seen that story.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a classic.
It is a classic.
Well, and isn't that what we did in the Middle East? We were like, give Iran weapons, give Iraq weapons. Oops, they started a civil war with each other. How did that happen? Well, because we armed them both and said, go at it.
Yeah, just like ISIS was given weapons. Go to it.
Just truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of
propaganda.
We'll just basically feed a monster until it gets so big that we don't know what to do with it. That was a great idea.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's almost like we're just then. I think that's why these rebellions are happening. Just like end the madness, right? Stop feeding the beast.
Yeah.
Having this fighting take place.
I mean, what's going on in Europe? There's Russia Today was saying on the news, and this is Russia Today, this is Russian news. Nobody else is talking about it here or the States. It's black media blackout. They're saying, Germany said, have enough food and water for at least 10 days because some kind of a natural catastrophe could happen or some kind of a conflict could happen. And it branched off to other countries saying that, local governments saying that to their citizenry. So what does that say? Who's planning what and who's planning to do something? So is it like what? Is it an economic collapse? Is it chemical warfare? Or is it nuclear warfare? What the heck is going on here? Why are these governments, local governments, telling their citizenry, be prepared for something? What's going on?
Well, 10 days is a hiccup. That's not being prepared for, absolute chaotic destruction or warfare. That's telling people to be prepared for hiccups. And so I think being prepared for hiccups, given all of the fluctuations that are happening, I was just talking to someone who I know has really good information on the financial resets, and I'm never a good person to talk about that because it's just not my area, and I would not even try and reiterate what this person disclosed to me, but all I can say is many of the obstructionists who were obstructing have been removed, okay? And some of them were, laid down with gold bounties to remove them, and other people were, generals walked into, corporate offices and said, let's take care of it or let's go out back. And there have been some very hard shakeups that, we have given some people a very long time to cooperate, and the more they have just said no, some crowbarring, is happening as we speak. And so I can't say, again, not a date-oriented sort of set of events, but there are events that have set into motion where these, again, I'm not the person to talk about it, but it's about the large certificates, okay, that these large institutions, banks and so forth trade that are worth, millions, tens of millions, of hundreds of millions of dollars each, that are all going into revalue before any of the street dollar stuff. And everyone seems to be really concerned and focused on, how their, street dollar, US dollar value is going to be affected or not affected. That's so far down the chain that I don't know anybody who really thinks they have a solid prediction on exactly how that's going to work out. But what we do know is what's happening with these large certificates and what's going to happen with the revalue of that, and how we're going back to a treasury-based currency as opposed to the Federal Reserve-based currency, et cetera, et cetera. So I think hiccups can be expected given the transitions that we're looking at. But I don't think we're looking at any major, like, oh my God, it was the end, or what are we going to do, it's hopeless, or my God, nuclear war, or massive disease, or chemical warfare. I don't think any of those things are on the menu at the moment. I think we're sorting some stuff out. Hiccups can occur, and of course there are people who are still fighting back and forth over how that's working out. But I think we have, if it's an arm wrestling match, we're way more over here than we are over here, if that's a decent metaphor.
Yeah.
So I think, again, hiccups are to be expected, but so 10 days is a hiccup.
Yeah.
So I don't see anything in regards to a large catastrophic thing, whether it be chemical fallout or nuclear disaster, and I think all those things really kind of pass us by because there's so much happening in regards to activity. But people are trying to put that trigger, and another one prevents that from happening, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's going on. But I'm looking more into the idea of like trade in regards to the interplanetary corporate conglomerate. About when this has happened, how does this take place? Is there a certain specific area that these trades take place, or is it happening all over the solar system? How do these guys work with these trades?
Well, it started out on Mars because the ICC, it's a bunch of conglomerates, companies from Earth that just said, we want to do this, and we want to do this somewhere where we can't be looked at. Can't look at our books, can't look at what we're doing. So they ventured out to Mars, and they started building out these lovely outposts with reverse engineered technology that they experimented on. Here on Earth in the secret vaults, the bases underground, they build out the ships, transfer that to Mars, and they know how to build better bases than the SSP. Actually, they have better bases. They have newer because they're always one step ahead of the SSP. They have newer technology. Everything is always newer. So their main bases on Mars for building these things out and then going out and trading in the solar system. So I don't think they do the trade on Mars per se. I think they take out the goods from the ships, the ICC ships take out the goods from the planet and then trade out in the solar system.
I see, yeah. Because Randy, you were talking about the base in Jupiter that you were personally attending, and there's a lot of trade going on there as well, too.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. All I'm hearing is garble, garble, garble from my audio.
Yeah, there was a base that you were talking about that was orbiting Jupiter that you were once a part of, and you were basically doing like guard duty.
Right, the Intergalactic Space Station, right. I've been there.
There's a lot of trade going on there.
Tons of discussions. I mean, basically, every time we were there, it was discussed treaty arrangements, trade negotiations, where you're in either very beginning stages of that conversation or near the end stages of that conversation. A few times where that would all culminate in a formal agreement, which, there was usually in a separate room sort of downstairs with no windows, where they would have the tables and the flags and all the dignitaries would show up, and you'd show up in your dress uniform and everyone would stand there. They'd sign everything and everyone go, yay, and then that was it. You just stand there and, I'm standing here. But yeah, every level of negotiation for either, hey, who are you? Let's get to know each other, and or, hey, we got some extra stuff. You got some stuff. Let's trade that stuff. And that's 99% of the conversations that are going on there are just discussions about what can we do to trade back and forth, and how's that going to work beneficially for everyone.
How did we communicate with a lot of these beings? Were they verbally speaking, or did we have empaths that were talking to them that way?
I thought it was fascinating that they had pretty much every method of translation that you could possibly think of. So they had psionic translators, they had psionic amplifiers that you could wear and communicate via, a sort of a connector, a computer, a psionic computer, a psionic translator. They had language audio translators, and actual verbal linguistic translators. I mean, it really was about the preference of each species and how they wanted to communicate and how they felt they were getting the best both two-way communication for their treaty or whatever their negotiation. So really what everyone was comfortable with was what you sat down with, and sort of how you communicated. And again, depending on species differences, language, linguistic differences, psionic differences, all the environmental differences, whether someone's in a liquid environment and someone's in a different gaseous environment, can also depend on what level of translation you might need. But pretty much every type of translation that you might think there might be a way to translate, they used.
Oh, wow. Did you have to wear any kind of apparatus to get an understanding about maybe some of the species you had to talk to? Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. It was interesting.
Like a simple comment or like
I mean, no, just like a little halo, that you just sort of put on your head, and all of a sudden you're just in the thought matrix of able to sort of hear and perceive the communicative thoughts, which again isn't like invading people's deep thoughts or exposing your deep thoughts. Some people get scared of telepathy when they think, I don't want people reading my deepest thoughts, and it's like, that's not really how it works. I mean, you have to really do a deep probe or something of someone or offer that information up, but when you're having sort of casual surface level conversations that are happening in more of these sort of beta frequency ranges, it is sort of like having a verbal conversation without using your mouth or your vocal cords. So just kind of put the little halo on, and again, it connects you through a computer, similar way that USMC SS members are connected with our psionic implants in a psionic computer, but this was all sort of actually done locally. Anyway, it was interesting.
So there's always been the talk about thousands of different species that are trading with Earth in that sense. How do they know about us? Are we just like the subject of gossip across the galaxy? Hey, go to Earth and then trade with them. They got some really cool toys. It's like, what's the word of mouth of attracting all these species to us?
From what I understand, we have this uncanny ability to make things. So when your goal as industrialists is to, how do we use better materials, have more efficient manufacturing process, save pennies per manufactured item on both labors, parts, materials, make a something that has quality materials that stress under the engineering points and so forth. I mean, we're good at meticulously like making something better and better and better and better and better. Mm-hmm. And as I point out, that's not really that normal. A lot of species intergalactically, they basically go like, oh, we can build a spaceship. We're good. We don't ever have to improve on that design. We don't ever have to make it better. It works. Why fix if it ain't broken? Mm-hmm. Whereas we are like, we build a spaceship and look at it and go, yeah, that's not bad, but I bet I could make that a little more aerodynamic, and I bet I could make that a little faster, and I bet I could make that engine weigh a little bit less. And we immediately want to tinker with all the engineering points and make it better and better and better and better and better and better and better until we've spent umpteen millions of hours to make this more precision thing, just because we're driven to. Some part of us is driven to do that, and not everybody else is. So we absolutely want to make things better, more precise, out of the best materials with the most efficient, cost ratios, and so we just make good stuff. Our manufacturing and our industry makes good stuff, and so if you're shopping on the intergalactic market and you start looking at same old, and you go, oh wow, this stuff from Earth, this stuff from the Earth, from the Sol system, man, they know how to make quality stuff. Give me 1,000 of those. So before you know it, we're well known for making good stuff. And so we're really good manufacturers is really what it comes down to. We make high quality stuff, and that makes people want our stuff, because a lot of other people just are like, well, it's good enough, right? And no, we want to make it better and better and better. So when that's your goal, you sell more stuff.
So I'm wondering, is there an intergalactic internet?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there totally is. There totally is.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the ICC has the best manufacturing labs around. Their bases have all of it. Galactic Internet, ICC is very meticulous. Their workers spend thousands of hours in the lab just tinkering on one little thing to put it together. And the specs, it's like we have the curiosity and the drive to experiment. We'll experiment on it until it's perfect. They test it. It goes out. The thing the ICC does, they're very clever. They don't trade on Mars, on the planet itself. They make stuff on the planet, they take it off-world, and then they trade somewhere else. So, just in case, if we're caught, if the Earth Alliance or the SSP, if we're caught, hey, we did it elsewhere. The evidence is not on the planet. We just make the stuff. We just manufacture
anything to cover their ass, right? So.
Anything to cover their ass, for sure. They're very clever about that. And there's, and it's all I can't even say it. It's all separated, compartmentalized. It's all separated. They're doing, one guy is building something, but he doesn't know what the other part is for. He's building a section of something, and then that section will be connected to something else. So they're given the specs to build certain things, but they don't know exactly what it could be for. You know, the big picture. They don't always know.
So their intergalactic internet could actually reach out to other species, like say in Rigel, in Orion, in Pleiades, etc., and say, "Hey, we're going to send you guys an email, and here you go." Poof,
well,
you know, whatever
yeah,
it is.
it's a psionic email. You know, like the Gartha network has those egg chairs where you're sitting. That's their galactic internet. They're connected psychically through the chairs. They could reach out to anyone they want. Even in another solar system. It's easy because when your psionic abilities are so developed, you don't need to speak anymore verbally to just contact you. You're like, knock, knock. Can I have entry to talk to you telepathically? Yes, of course. Permission granted. Conversation starts.
Let's talk about that. If we sit in this psionic chair, what do we go, like, how do we activate this? If I'm sitting in this chair right now, do I put a helmet on? Do I flick a switch? Do I just put the intention of the thought? And is there like an interface that comes up and we start to communicate with some of these beings? If we were to sit like in one of those chairs.
It's a holographic interface. It's not like a computer cord pops up or something pops out of a chair and you're like, put a visor on and do it that way. That's old school. It's all activated psionically through your brain waves and your vibrational frequencies. And it's a holographic interface. Like you're seeing stuff in your head. It's not in front of you, but it's in your head. And you're like, oh, okay, I want to follow this data stream and I want to talk to this person. So you knock on their psionic vibrational frequency. Knock, knock. Permission. Do you give me permission to talk to you this way, psionically, telepathically? I'm from Anchar, blah blah blah. Can we get started? It's like a virtual conference call.
And can this be associated with anybody, like anybody within the galaxy? Like if you wanted to talk to another human being on Earth through these chairs, could you do that?
Well, as long as they make themselves available.
Yeah, and they have that chair as well. It depends. Like, do you have that chair? If you do, yeah, sure. And you want to talk to me, but you don't have access to the other parts of my brain. You only have access to this specific vibrational frequency at this specific time. You're only allowed to have access to this portion of, the holographic. It's like a holographic room, virtual reality holographic room where they meet. So, and you only have access to that specific area. You don't have access to other areas of the brain, to the other person. So there's permissions and codes and frequency, vibrational frequencies. It's all prearranged prior to the holographic meetup.
It would just be so amazing if, like, publicly we're able to get one of these particular types of chairs, how that would change our world.
Well, if I don't need a chair to do that, I just do it. Because I've just been training myself. I've really been training myself in all these esoteric modalities and just I said to the elves, and they're the ancient builder race descendants, I said, hey, I want it. I want to know my past. You're here, I'm here, I want to be on the ship. Give me access. Give me access, and it just happens. It's easy.
Very cool. Well, Randy, let's. Randy, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a basic psionic amplifier with a few tweaks, and so we certainly have intention and designs to start working on some psionic amplifiers when we have the resources to pull multiple research and development projects. And probably the first thing that we would develop that would work like that would be a psionophone. And a psionophone isn't something that you just are able to communicate with another person with. It is something that is for data access and retrieval. But yeah, no, to answer your question, how cool would that be? Well, I'll let you know when we build one, because it will be pretty cool. But that's not. And the interesting thing about psionic amplifiers is you really can put one together using 15th century materials. You don't necessarily need 21st century materials to put it together. 21st century materials might help, but really the basics of the technology are not, transistors and circuits or something, so that you don't necessarily need, 20th and 21st century electronics and hardware to put it together.
Like Tesla coils, copper wire, copper coils.
Yeah, but we have a way that we think that using lasers will enhance the precision that we want, like real super precise precision. So using some advanced materials will be put into there, but the nice thing about it is you don't have to. You could essentially, hammer it out of, 15th century materials if you really had to. But yeah, it's not rocket surgery kind of stuff. It's mostly about math and geometry. So the particular design that we'll probably work with, because the actual halo, the micro sort of building of the halos is just a lot of people with magnifying things working with little tiny pieces. It's a real pain in the butt. So actually what we're thinking about doing is an external device that essentially you'll sit in a chair and this thing will come down over your head like one of those old hair dryers, and it'll spin around, and it'll actually set up an external field around your head without having to put this little teeny thing on your head, which is really advanced and cool, but it just requires so much people working on little tiny parts. I just don't want to put anybody through that right now, and I think
micro surgical
microcircuitry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just and I don't want to have to deal with that myself or make anybody else do that. So I think what we'll start to do is something that looks more like an old hair dryer.
Well, speaking of development as well too, like you're working on the med beds as well too. How is that coming along?
All I can say is that there's tons of interest that I have in people sending me information to solve issues or problems. I have people continuing to try and sort or ask questions about the holographic lens questions, which we're dealing with. But there's just some intermediate issues that I would say at the moment we're still sorting out before I can pay an entire engineering team and research and development team to actually get making that happen, like boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. So we're at what I would say are still introductory phases of doing the little bits and pieces that we can with the resources that we have at the moment. And all of the people who are really just jumping to offer to help free of charge, and what can I do and how can I help, and here's this information. And it's amazing the response that people have eagerly wanted to help and give in order to make the holographic beds happen, which I can see why. They solve a lot of problems in a world where we have a broken view of healthcare, and we just need to get away from highly expensive invasive procedures and drugs that don't really work, and there's just simpler, more cost-effective things that have higher effectiveness, and we just need to transition at some point. So
is it just a matter of being able to kind of look into the lens, like being able to?
No, I mean there's really what is going to be the difference between what phase we're at and a phase to have a prototype is when I have enough funding, which is coming. I don't want to talk like I need people to get out their checkbooks, because I don't. I appreciate donations. They're always welcome and great, appreciated, but I don't need people to bust out their checkbooks for me. The funding will be coming from other sources and things that we're working on. And when I can essentially pay the people full time that I need to be in a laboratory working on this, then we'll be at a different phase of how far away are we until we have a prototype that grows a leg back on a frog or tail back on a rat, or we start small and work our way up from there.
Something it's probably something that'll be a couple years in the making at least.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's essentially a software development. We have to take the software that's already exists and develop that to a higher resolution. We have to take holographic technology that already exists and develop that to a higher resolution, and then make sure that we have a sufficient power source. And I've been talking to people about different energy generation power source issues, and once we combine those three things engineering-wise into a harmonious model, like I said, and we get some ability to generate very, very tiny, high-resolution holograms, then we'll, grow a leg back on a frog or a rat and go, ta-da! And and that's a paper. That's a scientific paper, and then we continue further down the road of that. So it's a process, and I have said more than once it's probably a 10-year process from where we are right now to a functional model that could work on a human being or be approved to work on a human being. So we have to go through certain hoops like everybody else, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen because enough people really want to make it happen. Enough people really want to help make it happen. The financial assistance is moving down the pipe. That's not even a question. And so whether all of the pieces will be there or not to make it happen, again, is not a question. It's just a matter of when all that sorts out, not whether or not it will. So it'll happen. We'll make it happen. I'm very driven to make it happen, so it will happen if I have anything to say about it in this lifetime.
Excellent, very good.
I mean, this technology already exists. A few months ago, I did a presentation about the holographic med beds, and they also have these Meditech units. If the SSP has these Meditech units that if you've been injured or something, your leg has been blown off, it's a portable unit. They place you in it. It's in a stasis field, and they carry you in it so you don't die. They keep you in a stasis field, and they transport you to the medical pod and regrow your limbs. So it's like there's the Meditech units, the portable ones, and there's the medical pods. So it's an intricate design. Gotta know what you're doing to put it all together. And we're on Earth, so it's slower going here to build it than it is out there.
But there's already the blueprints, Randy, that you have to be able to already know how to build this from head to toe, right? So yeah.
But you have your red tape. You have everything is slower here than it is up there. Because it's already approved technology up there. Here you have to go through the loops of hoop to hoop.
Yeah, there's definitely some hoops to go through, but we feel very confident that we have the allies politically and industrial that we need to make it happen. Certainly we have people who don't want it to happen, but we think we have the allies to make it happen, so we're not worried.
Yeah, I think it could happen because, I mean, there's information about this stuff already on the internet. If you know really where to search and what to look for, you can find it on the internet, how it looks like, how it functions. You just don't have the blueprints to make it. The idea is there. It's already on the internet. There you go. There's Elysium, there's Prometheus. They have these things, these medical pods in the movies, in Elysium and in Prometheus. Hey, Vickers had her own medical pod in her own office on the Prometheus ship.
You just go to Hollywood consultants and they'll say, okay, let's look up in the SSP what they got. Oh, okay, this will be a good movie, right?
I would like those Hollywood consultants to please write me a check for stealing all my ideas that I've been giving them for the last few years. You're welcome very much. I'm kidding. I don't care about that. But it is kind of obvious when you see enough movies and you're like, hey, no one was talking about that until I talked about that. You guys are stealing all my ideas.
Well, exactly. And the way they're putting certain geometries in movies as well, these symbols as well, too. And like, okay, this is a little bit strange, right? So, okay, guys, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to questions. Elena, go ahead before we move on.
It's like all of this technology is in plain sight. All of this information is there for people to read about. It's in the movies. It's in the video games. It's disclosure in plain sight. If you know what you're looking at, you could basically figure it out. It's so easy.
Yes, exactly. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on to questions. And everybody, I'm apologizing if I look too orange. It's just the curtains I have here. So I look like an orange Julius, so I'm sorry about that. So we have one comment here from David Lear. He says, it's not a question, but the description that Elena gave about the Sentinel is exactly the same thing as what Corey Good was talking about. So I found it really interesting that you had these Sentinels here on Venus and basically kind of be like these gatekeepers for this suppository of information. So very fascinating. Good correlation there as well, too.
Well, I have an image of it. A few months ago in April, I downloaded an image. There's this jagged mountain. There's this guy walking in a silver suit. I can't see his face. I could tell it's a Sentinel. And there's this spherical planetoid beam, and it has a beam coming out of it on the planet. I'm like, oh, that looks familiar. Gee, save that image for later, and I just did a video about it describing what it is.
Oh, great.
So I've known
I'll have to
about
check
these
it out.
sentiments for a while. Yeah, it's a two-parter. It tells about Mars too, how that canyon crater came about.
Hmm.
So yeah, we're hanging out with similar. We're hanging out with similar folks. So it's just it is what it is. It's similar info.
Well, here's one from Jerome. Jerome asks, are there currently any Mars soldier groups, like when Randy was there, that's still on the planet?
Yeah, there's still Marines on there, and they're
Sure.
testing this new exoskeleton armor and plasma weaponry. It's like, can I ask you, Randy, a question?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
So when you were on Mars, what kind of weaponry were you using? Was it bullets or was it laser technology?
Gauss rifles or railguns, magnetically propelled projectiles.
Okay.
We did have plasma rifles for a very short period of time, but they were not very effective in the field against the reptoids, so we went back to the railguns. We went back to the Gauss rifles. So that's why I was finding it interesting that they're testing plasma rifles again, but maybe because they're not fighting a psionic species that makes their plasma rifles blow up in their hands, that's working for them.
Yeah, so is it like a physical bullet that magnetically propels itself out from the rifle and like goes?
Yeah, the barrel of the rifle is a series of magnets that accelerate the metal projectile down the rail gun, as it were, out the barrel. So you're essentially getting a really, really low heat, no kick projectile, hard projectile out the end of the barrel of a weapon, so that you can fire very, very fast, very, very accurately, lots and lots and lots and lots of them.
Well, the reptoids have this new ecto shielding that reflects the bullets, so it basically the bullets just pop off of them. It doesn't hit them anymore. So
They've always had the ability to psionically deter projectiles, and really, any amount that we were able to hit them at close range was really just because that was what they considered was fair. At that point, they wouldn't let us hit them. The farther away we were, they wouldn't let us hit them. But if we got closer and closer, then we could. And they mostly tried to engage hand to hand as often as possible. But yeah, they've always had the ability to sort of divert projectiles away from their bodies. And I'm sure they have psionically imbued armor and so forth that also helps that process along.
So
I remember you were telling I think a lot of the audience in one of your past interviews that you did, Randy, about like a berserker moment that you had as well too, when you were meeting that, and I think it was very something that you were very uncomfortable in talking about as well too.
Yeah.
About what happened. So I mean, you've had like all of these other kind of face-to-face encounters and intense encounters with these battles. So.
Oh yeah. We were, we consider ourselves good family through bloodshed now, because we've been and shared much bloodshed together. So, we consider ourselves, we have shed much blood together, and therefore we can sort of feel familial about that now. We have demonstrated ourselves worthy on the battlefield to be respected. So,
So what is happening on Mars right now? Do you guys have an idea about, like, with all these revolts that's been happening, these resistance movements and everything, like, what is the current status of everything that's happening on Mars pertaining to these bases and these military folks?
Up in the air is what I would say at the moment. Very up in the air. We have sent we've sent some people in to try and advise. We've sent some people in to try and help, and we're getting a lot of, we don't want your help. We don't want you here. We don't want nothing. Get out. And so we're kind of just trying to observe and mostly what we're able to do from a distance is observe supply lines and or assist or deter supply lines as we see we can sort of, like either choke off or try and help, people's lines going to and from. But that's really about all we can do at the moment, because they're kind of keeping it very, very unto themselves and keeping everybody else out and really want to fight this out themselves. So
are they basically kicking out like the ICC heads off of Mars and saying, get the hell out of here? This is our show now, or
not quite? No,
not yet.
Yeah, the ICC, their bases are they're built out of strong alloy material that's hard to destroy. The SSP, it's easier to destroy an SSP base than it is to destroy an ICC base, because the ICC bases are made differently than the SSP ones. So the alloy material is much more stronger for the ICC bases, so it's harder to nuke one, basically. It's a lot harder to nuke one, and the SSP personnel are not allowed to come in on the ICC basis.
I would also suggest that there are ICC personnel who are on both sides of this conflict, and so, you know, part of what's being sorted out may be an internal corporate conflict as much as anything else. So, I would suggest you have between those who wish to continue lawlessness versus those who understand that long-term profits are dependent on being in compliance with treaties, not violating them, and are willing to, you know, revolt against other members of the board in order to protect long-term profits. So don't presume that the members of the board who are fighting for sort of, you know, freedom, as it were, that they're really altruistic and they're really just like the best of light. They're not necessarily. They are fighting for long-term profits, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and so long-term profits go.
Yeah, as long as it's convenient for them and it keeps the whole rig going, you know, the whole outfit going, they're doing everything they can to keep it all going, and the ICC bases they have an advantage because they're built better than the SSP bases, because the technology, ICC has more technology. So nuking an ICC base is harder than nuking an SSP base, because the alloys, the materials it's built out of, where it's built on the planet, also strategically, that's something else. ICC always builds bases in very lovely prime real estate land that is strategically well placed on the planet, so it's harder to nuke them.
Right, but because most of the people who built them are on the side of the rebellion, it's basically reduced to a conventional guerrilla war at this point. So if you know where all the sewer lines are and all the utility tunnels are, it doesn't matter what kind of nuclear powered material, you can start crawling people in the I mean, it's really a. If we ever get, you know, the version in the history books about how this went down, it'll really make for, you know, fantastic historical reading someday, because I'm sure that they're really busting out some of their most creative thinking to sort out their problems. But it's just a dig down, drag out in the mud fight at the moment, and we can just sit back and kind of watch how it works out and do what little we can. That's really about it.
It's so interesting about how all of this is happening within the galaxy. And then we look at our lives and we're worrying about a car payment, or we're worrying about a mortgage. I'm like, this is nothing compared to, you know, what's happening in the galaxy. I mean, we got to really open ourselves up and see what's actually happening. I mean, really just these petty things about bills and mortgage payments and getting the kids and going to school, just nothing compared to what's actually happening in this galaxy. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, the SSP is working on new technology, broadcasting technology. Says if the Cabal if there's a data dump, if the Cabal pulls the switch and turns the whole internet off, the SSP will use another technology, and they'll turn on your computers without needing the internet, and they'll do a broadcast. If the SSP wants to do a disclosure event, they can certainly do one without needing the internet.
It's very interesting you brought that up, Elena, because that was yesterday in the webinar that I was doing with Jonas coming through. He was basically saying that there's a very large possibility that a worldwide announcement would come if there was like a gigantic contact. They were saying, he said basically all of your media would get it. It would not be a problem. You know,
Serena, the overseer, is on it. She's working with Section 5 and 8 on that technology. It's a voice of God technology amplified 10 times better. So she's like, we're working on this. If the Cabal does the kill switch and turns off the internet, we have counter technology. You can just turn on your computers, your cell phones, anything, and make a massive broadcast. So they're working on the tech. She let me know about that.
Great. Excellent.
And no details on how it works, but she's like, hey, they have their plan, we have our counter plan.
Yeah, exactly. It's always some group that's a couple of steps ahead from another.
Yeah. So the SSP has certain technologies, so they can like, oh, well, the Cabal did this, we'll counter with that, and we'll still get the info out. If we want a massive event all over the planet, we have the ability to broadcast it. We don't need the internet, because your device, it was turned off, it could still be turned off. It's electronic.
Well, like I said, it's this year and the next 8 years, I think, are really the peak times for some amazing changes that are going to happen, like, especially this year. But I think even within the next 8 years, you know, Jonas refers to this as a span of change. Like, we're just pulling out all of these roots and saying, hey, this is what's here, right? And it's unavoidable to not see, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to the next question, guys. We have one here from Tamara, and Tamara asks, "Hello, could you guys explain a little bit about the differentiation of the history of the draconians, the progenitors, and the giants in our solar system, and how they're all connected? I have heard many explanations about their histories, but I have become confused by similarities. Is there any kind of knowledge you guys may like heard of the giants or the progenitors and their association with the Draco, or any one of those particular groups that you're aware of?"
Well, the progenitors and the giants are the ancient builder races.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they are. The draconians come from the Orion Empire. And the Orion Empire has many different factions of draconians, so it's not just one race of draconians.
Mm-hmm.
So and the ancient builder race is very mysterious. It's hard to localize where they come from. Nobody really knows where they come from. Mm-hmm. As they've told me, they come from a whole other universe.
That's what I've received as well, too. Like, the ancient builder race wouldn't even be from this universe, they're from somewhere else.
Yeah, they're from somewhere else, and they don't give a lot of, hey, I'm in contact with Elena, but she doesn't really tell me, like, all the details of that universe. That's still a mystery to me. I mean, I've seen the buildings 13,000 years in the future, how it looks on their end in that universe, but I don't get specifics about it. So it's really...
Pretty sure it will be coming to us just at a proper time.
Yeah, I mean,
next stage of evolution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've entered in fourth dimension. We're in this vibration. So info is coming out. So it's hard to tell where the progenitors are from because they're mysterious. Exactly. It's easier to talk about draconians.
Well, Randy, I just remember your story that you were talking about, you know, when there was a scuffle that you guys had between the reptoids, and all of a sudden you'd see these Draco ships flying by, and they immediately, like you said, took them out within seconds, right?
It was like less than 2 minutes front to back. It was an incredibly short period of time. Yeah.
So my feeling is maybe that they've had their dealings with the Draco in the past, in the ancient past, and they said, yeah, we want nothing to do with them.
Yeah. My conversation with them much later on that subject was that, they're familiar with not just them, but, you know, species that they would consider to be hostile invaders. And a hostile invader is not someone who wants to come and say, hey, can we hang out and maybe live on your planet with you and maybe argue with you or not? That's not the same thing. Someone who really just is like, oh, your food, water, rocks, minerals, gold, hamburger meat, anyone who really sees you as just, you know, a smorgasbord or a buffet table is not to be negotiated with, is not to be made peace with, is to be shown no mercy, no quarter, and be destroyed utterly unto dust. That is their philosophy. And so anyone who has demonstrated that they have no honor and no integrity or no reason to do anything other than see you as a buffet table, they have no reason to talk nice or say, hey, play nice. They were like, oh, they're back again. Let's destroy them utterly and send that message very clear that we don't want them here.
So the reptoids, are they a sub-race of the Draco, or are they really not?
Totally different reptoid species, completely different evolutionary chain as far as I understand. The Draconians have almost what I would call more of a crocodile lizard sort of appearance, and the reptoids on Mars were more like a desert rock lizard. I mean, those are really generalized kind of evolutionary background chains compared to things that we have here. But I would just describe them as being kind of very different evolutionary chains along very different types of reptile species.
Were the Draco more kind of like dragon-like, or dragon or gargoyle?
Well, you know, there's the larger ones definitely are more dragon-like, and you don't see them very often. And the other sort of lower castes, the warrior castes and the lower castes, they can have very twisted appearances and can have augmented technology and cybernization and things, and in some cases are practically fused with their machines. It's in a very grotesque sort of almost, you know.
It's almost like looking at demons out of hell, right?
I was going to say, anyone who's really familiar with the work of H.R. Giger, I mean, really, it's just a very dark kind of
Xenomorphs, yeah.
machine, very ugly, gruesome kind of thing that sort of did ooze this kind of visible, corrupt darkness out of them, and it was, they're creepy.
Wow.
But, so they're hard to describe sometimes because you don't know that you're really seeing them in their natural form. So gargoyle-ish, gator-ish, dragon-ish, those are all things that are that I would say can go in there, but since hardly I ever really saw one against a white background to really get a pure look at it, those are all apt descriptions, I suppose.
Yeah. Elena, how about you? Have you seen kind of like the dragon, gargoyle-ish kind of Draco?
Oh, I've seen 100-foot ones that have dinosaur DNA, ancient dinosaur DNA spliced with their like the Draco DNA, and they look like Godzilla times 100.
Wow.
And it's like you're what I'm 5'5". I'm looking up at this thing. I'm not afraid of it, but I know what it is. So the fear factor is no longer there. It's 100 feet tall. It's like the size of a skyscraper sometimes. I'm like, why the heck did you do this? Because we were interested in fusing dinosaur DNA. That's why we did it. We wanted to experiment to see how this DNA would fuse with this DNA, machine with dinosaur, ancient dinosaur DNA. And you have this new reptilian Draco, whatever it is, or you have your Zagor. He was the Dark Fleet liaison to the Dark Fleet.
Yeah, he's reptilian.
He's reptilian / insectoid, so he's a hybrid. He's about 12 foot tall, very centered and grounded. He doesn't look grotesque. It's hard to tell what he looks like.
So a reptilian insectoid hybrid.
Yeah, so they do a lot of hybridization now.
What were the insectoid parts of him? Did he feel like more like a wasp or like an ant or?
No. Like praying mantis.
Oh, praying mantis. Okay.
Yeah, insectoid. Still insectoid. So his face looks kind of elongated, like that mantoid, but it has something else in it, like reptilian. The eyes. So it's really sleek, compact body.
So kind of like the scales, maybe the scales of a reptilian, or?
No, the scales you can barely see them. Very green. Definitely wears an exoskeleton, armor, machinery. It's kind of fused to him, so he's connected with that. Very. They're into hybridization right now. Compact, sleek, easy to move around. So they're not. Some of the hybridized ones, they're not hulking huge. They're like 16 feet, but they're not hulking huge, muscular. They're made for speed, and they're made for quick battle.
Wow. I wanted to get both of your opinions on Dark Fleet, because there's been talk about Dark Fleet. Corey Good has talked about Dark Fleet. What do you guys know in regards to the Dark Fleet in that way?
Very efficient, very
compartmentalized. Right?
Yes, exactly. Very efficient. They get things done right away. It's like, and their uniforms are incredible. I got to see their uniforms. It's very, a lot of white and black. Mix of that.
Are they very militaristic? They just go out and do a lot of the dirty jobs? Is that what they're all about, or?
It depends. It depends on what the mission is. Some of them are military type, very oriented. Some of them are working in labs on experiments on projects. So it really depends on what the mission is, what they'll get out of it, how far they have to go.
And they kind of almost look like the Imperials from Star Wars. Right?
Yes, they do. Well, the ones that I saw were wearing these, like this white black suit uniforms, not Jedi robes. Yes. The ones that I saw weren't wearing Jedi robes, and I saw a few women. They have 2 guns strapped to the uniform, and they mean business. It's all about business. They're really serious. They mean business. You don't want to mess with them. You don't want to come across them in the wrong way.
Now, are they associated with the Draco Empire?
No, they're associated with the Dark Fleet, but there is the influence.
It's a Dark Fleet associated with the Draco Empire.
Yeah, they go out and do missions together, but they don't. You don't often see Zagor on the ship, on the Dark Fleet ships. Zagor is a liaison. He's on his side. He doesn't particularly like what he's doing either. He doesn't like the stuff.
Yeah.
Vampire makes them do so. Not all of the liaisons like what they're doing.
Randy, have you had awareness of the Dark Fleet?
No comment.
Okay. I mean, Corey Good has talked about the Dark Fleet on occasion. So he would mention about what they're about, and a lot of them are outside the star system right now.
Yeah.
A lot of them can't even get back in, so they're kind of known these days.
Yeah, that's not something that my Brigadier General and I have had a lot of discussion with, so it's not something that I would feel comfortable talking about right now.
Sure, no problem.
Well, can I make a comment?
Go for it.
Even though they're outside the solar system, they have a lot of bases and cities built out on other planets, so they're doing just fine. They're not in trouble. They're locked out from our solar system, but their bases are incredible. I was given special permission. Zagor took me to one of their cities, and they're doing just fine. Their bases are even more sophisticated than the ICC ones. So it's incredible. They've built out their own civilization breakaway group.
Very good. All right, let's get on to another question here. This one's from Fairwind Alliance. They ask, both Corey Good and Cobra talk about full disclosure coinciding with a cosmic energy shift in humanity. Do you guys feel that this is also so?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I was just on the sun recently with another light being called Varia that I met, another ET being, and she's like, the sun has these energetic funnels that swirl and twirl, like they look like fire funnels, and that's what powers the corona of the sun. So basically, the sun is going through a spectrum shift change where it's yellow, but it's going to go to orange, and it's going to emit more solar flares and CMEs, and that's going to basically change the electrical magnetic field of the planet, and even the electrical. We run on electricity. Our bodies. It's weird, but we do some electrical charges. We do have electrical charges in the body, so that's going to be amplified 100-fold.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. This is exactly what Adrona said, word for word yesterday about what you're saying.
When that huge, flare happens and it emits it out of the corona, because it's going to change spectrum. It's going to change color all of a sudden. And this could be in the near future. It could be now. We don't have a specific date for this.
Yeah.
There's no specific date, but when it happens, the human beings here on this planet will be electricized, so to speak. It's like getting an electricity jolt, a juice of electricity in your body, and bam, you're evolved to something else.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what Adronis was saying yesterday. He says basically, possibly between 2016 and 2018, there would be the large solar flare. In that sense, a lot of people have been talking about. And basically, it's encompassing the entire planet, not to harm it, but just to completely recalibrate the magnetic poles and the magnetic static in that sense. In that way, and everything upon the life pertaining to their magnetic fields will be changed. This is actually helping us to become a lot more empathic, a lot more telepathic, and actually moving ourselves into a higher threshold of dimensional crossing. Right? So he says that there really won't be the 3 days of darkness that a lot of people have been talking about. He says basically that the days will become lesser and lesser with light time, with daylight time. So there may be some of that a crossover for a span of a few days, but there will not be a complete 3 days of darkness. It's just something in regards to reduced daylight time.
And the sky might change color. How it's blue right now might be greenish purple.
And that might be a new hue of blue or something.
Yes,
like that.
yeah, or slightly purple, because when the corona of the sun changes spectrum frequencies and changes color, the sun will be like brighter than it is, and that actually changes the sky of a planet. Where the planet is orbiting close to the sun. So, and it might change us physically too, physiologically, the appearance of humans.
And have a lot more awareness of each other. Like it's really just it's almost like a fourth density blast. Is basically what it is. It's moving us into that higher degree. And he basically says that this is estimated to happen between now and the next 2 years. It's not for definite. But somewhere within that 2 year span.
And the Cabal is frightened of this.
Oh, they're cowering under the grounds, right?
Yeah, they're going into Antarctica. They're going into the Brazil bases. NORAD is packed, basically.
Yeah, I think what they're really afraid of is what humanity will become after that happens. There's no more secrets. There's no more hiding.
Exactly. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And Varia, she lives in the sun. She's a light being. So she lives on the sun. She feeds off of these funnels of energy in the sun. And the funnels are speeding up, and they'll go.
Well, that's what Adronis is. Adronis lives in the Sirius sun, like he's starlight, right? So
and
from one sun being to another, right?
Yeah, I was in the sun. I'm like, whoa, I was sleeping. The next moment, I'm transported. And I'm like, it looks like fire. I'm like, I'm gonna be burned. She's like, no, 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 don't worry.
There's a safety zone inside the sun.
Yeah, yeah,
This was
yeah.
talking about this as well too. Like you can actually have civilizations existing inside the sun
Yeah.
and
She's
not be
like,
burned at all. Right?
she's like, don't worry. Your body is light right now. You're not gonna be burnt, so these funnels won't burn you. I was like, I'm gonna be a crispy critter. She's like, no, just calm down. Look at the flares. Just calm down, sit down. We're gonna have a chat. I'm gonna show you some things.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to the next question here. We had one here. Hi, Randy and Elena. This is a bit off topic, but do you guys know anything about the recent intelligence about Nibiru? It seems like there's been a lot of upticks in the number of YouTube videos this past month about it.
There's so much disinformation about those particular issues. I don't rely on anything that's coming through the internet to be very reliable about that at the moment.
I agree. Yeah.
That I really don't have much comment about that other than that we're certainly not getting much of the truth. We're getting a lot of propaganda.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always said that. I said please don't worry about focusing so much on Nibiru or flat Earth or anything of that nature, because again, a lot of this stuff to me is just really psyops. Or the idea that when you pass away, there's a soul trap, on the moon, and your soul's going to be trapped in there. And I said, guys, that's all due respect, complete bullshit. So to me, being able to look at the Nibiru questions, the flat Earth questions, and the soul trap questions are very, very common. And just for my own guidance, it's complete BS.
I've been on Nibiru. It's a lovely traveling planetoid sphere. They have a lot of cultures. They do a lot of training, different, esoteric modalities. They do a lot of training. They have classrooms, etheric classrooms where you could visit.
Yeah, I see it as our companion star, kind of like we're a binary star system. Nibiru would represent our companion star. And the journalist even said the other day is like, there is in no way in any particular timeline of it ever interfering or causing any havoc with our star system. It does not work that way.
No, not at all.
It's not that bad in the form of chaos.
And they have a Syrian habitat actually on that planetoid.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of Syrian colonies in that one.
And they taught me the crystal healing, and I've sent you the book. You have the book, Brad. I do. It's like when I was there, I didn't see anything bad. I didn't see any reptilians fighting each other. It's all it's different habitats for different species.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it as a battle star planetoid. It doesn't do battle.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, though, if there's been a lot of voice of God technology interruptions with a lot of these people and think, oh my God, this is what Nibiru is going to do to you, or this is exactly what you're living on a flat Earth, or this is exactly you're going to go into a soul trap when you die, and all this stuff, right? So it's a lot of propaganda and psyop.
It is. It is. It's like the Cabal tried to show me a purge scenario, how they're going to purge the planet of people. I'm like, get real, go away. I'm not going to be.
Exactly.
Forget it. You can't scare me with that. I said, I'm saying no to that plan of yours. Mm-hmm. I don't want this. Get out of my field of vision.
Out of my reality, completely. Yeah.
Get out of my reality. I don't want to see this crap.
Exactly.
You're not welcome here. So, and I've been attacked quite a few times. My website was taken down. I've been seeing stuff, and I'm like, get out. You can't compromise me. Just leave. Go away.
Exactly.
Scared
right, guys, we're gonna move on to the next question here. The old lead, I think his name is Old Load asks, where can we find psionic training programs or links to any material with such information? I'm pretty good at finding things, but best I have done is Ingo Swan's teaching and material. Randy, is there any information on psionic training?
I mean, there's plenty of people who teach every kind of meditative and method that there is out there, but there really, I don't think, are too many people that are, taught what I taught when I did a seminar last year and taught my workshop, which was basically laws of psionics, brainwave mastery, and sort of how all that works together, which we're planning on doing another curriculum and another class next year. So people who really want to pay attention to that will have something about that. But everybody's got a thing and a way that they think it works and how to teach people how to use the mind powers and develop them. But the basic thing is you have to practice something. So meditative exercises to practice brainwave mastery, to get into alpha and theta states, because that's what's going to get your internal development process moving and going. Mm-hmm. So I just encourage people to do your own development, which is really sort of what you have to do. You can listen to people's methods, you can take steps from other people, but essentially take the tools and pieces that function for you to develop your own alpha theta states and your own sort of centeredness about your own development. And that's really the way you're going to learn, because there's so many people who have gotten really good at something that worked for them. But taking that technique and saying, here, everybody, this will work great for you because it worked great for me, is not really the case. So
Right.
even the course that I teach is like, here are fundamental tools. Here is how you write your own operating system. Here's how you apply those tools in some way to your own life. Now you figure out how that works for you. Don't let me tell you how that works for you. Because at some point you have to customize all of those tools for yourself and how you work, and not take somebody else's path and wear different clothes and cut or wear your hair, your beard differently because you have to follow somebody else's path. I think that type of thinking is just outdated and completely unnecessary.
Right. Well, let's look at the idea of like the psionic, because I think some people get confused and saying, oh, if we're looking at psionics, we're immediately looking at psychic technology. Are we basically looking at it as an attribute that we naturally have? Like, say, if I am psionic in that sense, then that's basically me feeling, for lack of a better term, psychic. So is it basically when we say psionic, we're not just referring to technology, but we're referring to the actual attributes of being?
Right. First law of psionics is that all thought produces psionic energy. So essentially any living being that can produce a thought produces psionic output. And so it is simply the harnessing, developing, and focusing of those psionic outputs which create manifested psionic abilities like telepathy, telekinesis, pyrokinesis, or any of the other kinesises or telek thingies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a place where you start that journey, and then it takes a long time to master it and get really good at all of the various abilities along the train. But you start that path by developing your skills and practicing a meditative practice and brainwave mastery every day. And connecting with your higher self and your lower self, because those are the parts of yourself that are going to help you communicate and understand those tools and how they apply to you and what lessons you need to learn as you go along and what's appropriate for you, etc.
Did you have a meditation example about what a person would need to do if they wanted to begin a psionic journey? Is there a certain regime that would need to be implemented into the meditation for that to begin?
Well, the basics of meditation are slowing your breathing down so that your autonomic system slows down your brain waves so that you go into alpha and theta states. So the general rule is if you can do an inhale for 7 to 10 seconds and an exhale for 7 to 10 seconds, trying to keep it even every time. If you're inhaling for 7, exhale for 7. If you inhale for 10, exhale for 10.
Mm-hmm.
And that will naturally cause your brain waves to lower down into alpha and theta states. So essentially any practice where you sit and practice slowed breathing and mental visualization and focus is the beginning of practicing any set of meditative exercises. Beyond what specific tools, techniques you want to use or develop beyond that is up to you as an individual. But essentially anything that starts with slowing your breathing to master brainwave technique and to master self-awareness and self-understanding is the beginning of a meditative process. And any beginning of a meditative process is the beginning of a psionic development process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Very
and
good.
sometimes people find it hard to tune out, what's outside, the exterior noises and stuff. Like, they sit down to do the meditation, they do the breathing, but they cannot cut themselves out of the external factors.
I use earplugs. I started using earplugs and it works great because I have this super I can hear everything. Well, I just stuffed earplugs in my ears. I can't hear anything. I'm in my head. It works great.
Yeah.
For
some
me,
people even just go to sensory deprivation as well.
Yeah. For me, even the earplugs don't work because I have supersonic hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I plug my ears, I can hear stuff. So I put on specific metaphysical music, the vibrational aspects of the music that vibrates with me. And you have to find your own music. It's not one set all for people. So I put in earbuds and I put in the specific music that vibrates well with me, that helps me to get into that meditative state. And you can start astral traveling sometimes that way too. You just go, oh, these vibrations and frequencies just work so well. The music takes you into that astral travel state without you intending to go there. So sometimes you might get more out of something than you expected.
Yeah, I mean, even with my own practice as well too in meditation, I can actually go into a meditative state even if there is some noise around. If it's something that's supersonic loud, right, in that sense, then I'll probably have some challenges. But usually with background ambience in that sense, I just learned to tune all of that in and then being able to turn all of that out and just being able to focus on the breath and go into these kind of deeper states. So it's very interesting how we're just all able to do different things and look into those meditation processes. But
And the more you practice, the easier it gets. And as I tell everybody, if you're just starting to practice, it's going to be difficult. You're going to be like, oh, I don't want to do this. My brain doesn't want to do this. Oh, my body, why am I having such a hard time? Because you haven't developed a habit yet. Is when you develop it into a habit, then it's very, very easy. When I'm doing regular meditation on a regular basis, yeah, I can sit down and 10 seconds later be, in an alpha theta state. So, but if I haven't been practicing every day, then it can take a few minutes longer, and so.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for 8 years, so I'm pretty used to it. But I try to do it on a daily basis. I think maybe once a week is my limit. So, anyways, very good. Let's move on to the next question here. There's what about the pole shift? Is there any word on a pole shift that may be happening with Earth?
May or may not happen. There are efforts to prevent it, but we'll sort of have to cross that bridge when we come to it, or we won't. Really.
Well, I mean, I felt the earthquake energies here in BC, and I just diverted that energy. I took it out to the central sun. I woke up shaking physically, like the earthquake was within me because I was transferring the energy. I had an Atlantis lifetime where I died basically when the whole thing went down as a mermaid. And so I don't like earthquakes, so I decided to be proactive and transfer the energy so nothing here would happen. I took it to the central sun, released it out there. So it's about mind over matter. I mean, if you don't want something to happen, just help do meditation. Help put out a positive thought form. You don't want an earthquake here? You don't want a volcano eruption? Just, put out the thought that you'll balance the energy so that doesn't happen. In my case, I had to take the energy out somewhere else and release it.
Yeah, and there was something that I was receiving as well too, and I think a few others are receiving about in August that there was a possibility of the West Coast earthquake, and I'm happy to say that a lot of that has been averted because again we all came together, and I told everybody, so let's make this happen, let's make sure that it doesn't happen, right? And so I feel that there was a really huge shift to prevent that particular form of West Coaster because a lot of people were talking, oh yeah, I feel like there's an earthquake coming. It's okay, then let's tackle it and let's get rid of it right away.
Yeah, my case is taking the earthquake energy physically from this planet, from the West Coast, and putting it to the central sun because the central sun is an output of energy, input and output.
Yeah.
So there's energy transfers going out. It's like a way station.
So you're talking about our sun inside our Earth?
No. The central sun is in another solar system altogether.
Okay.
There's I saw quite a lot of different cities and guardians. It's a way station. It's an energy transferring way station.
Okay. Are we looking into like the center of the galaxy with that central sun, or are we looking at something different?
We're looking sort of the center of the galaxy and not quite. It's very mysterious. What I was told that it's a way station for energy transfer. They give us energy outputs that we need, like energetic wave energy for evolution and stuff, and then they also take energy from us that we transfer, extra energy, so the earthquake doesn't happen. We could put it to the central sun, and it will be transmuted, and nothing will happen.
Okay. I've also been told our own sun can do that as well, too.
Yes, but I took it to the central sun, which is much bigger than our sun, so it could handle the transfer of the energy source.
Good. Very good, yeah, absolutely. So basically, I've been hearing from Adronis as well too, because he's also confirmed this with the Inuit, and they've actually discovered that the Earth has already shifted, has already had a bit of a pole shift, and it's basically 3 degrees or so off center, because the North Star actually no longer lines up with the center of their viewpoint anymore. So basically, from what's been shared, there's already been a pole shift in regards to that. It may not have been a big one, but something in regards to about a 3 to 4 degrees off center pertaining to the Earth already. Yeah. So the Inuit have already confirmed this as well too, because their whole idea is looking at the stars and mapping everything out with that. So very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So we're gonna be starting to wind down now. Let's go ahead and again just share our websites with everybody. Elena, your website once again.
It's elenalist.wixsite.com/startravelermessages.
Great, excellent. And Randy?
EarthCitizenConsulting.org.
.org. Excellent. And Randy, you've also had you've also been on the Gaia TV as well too, and so we can expect to see you. I think it was called
Oh
Deep
yeah,
Space.
yes. They came out and asked me a bunch of questions, and supposedly I will be expertised as the expert on a lot of different issues throughout the series, and so I guess that's up on Gaia TV right now, and I haven't watched it yet. I don't watch my own stuff, and so I got to let somebody else watch it and tell me how it went. But yes, they are doing that, and it's up and going. And watch Deep Space.
Okay, it's called Deep Space, and you guys can check it on Gaia TV as well. Well, guys, thank you so much again for a really wonderful episode. Once again, we'll definitely be doing this again for the next couple of months. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for checking out the SSP, Inside the SSP today. We look forward to our next episode. Thank you, Randy, and thank you, Elena, for being here today.
Yeah, and I also have my own Awakening Cosmic Reality show, radio show on YouTube. So I do interviews, I do presentations, so that's out there on YouTube for anybody to have a look at, because I like to produce my own stuff, so I'm out there.
All right, excellent. Thank you, guys, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Bye.